Hi, everyone. I'm Vanessa Molter. I'm here on behalf of Google Tag, and I'll be talking about domain of deception, how China's GLASSBRIDGE campaign manipulates the web. So for its information operations, on the covert side, China has pretty extensive capabilities on the overt side. On the covert side, we know of this spammy influence network Google calls DragonBridge. It's also known as Spam Dragon, and that's a cross-platform network that's been active for years. So you see here Google, Twitter, Meta talking about enforcement on this network. And actually at Google, we have 2 different blog posts about this. But then what's new here is what our sister team, Mandiant, discovered around 2 years ago. So they first reported detecting dozens of domains spreading IO content linked to a Chinese PR company. And then expansion on that later showed that there were and are actually multiple hundred domains run by that same company. And over the past 2 years, new firms linked to that initial one have been uncovered, and those new firms are using very similar tactics. So we track these connected firms as GLASSBRIDGE. And in this presentation, I'm going to dive into how the firms operate and give a couple of examples of what their domains look like. I'll also share about how Google has enforced on this type of activity and how this fits into the broader IO picture. So GLASSBRIDGE. As I had mentioned, GLASSBRIDGE is an umbrella term for 4 separate companies that operate networks of inauthentic news sites and newswire services. TAG has identified more than 1,000 websites that pose as independent news outlets, but are in fact publishing pro-PRC narratives in a highly coordinated manner. Since we only have a few minutes together today, I won't go into detail on each of those firms separately. However, if you would like to know more, we just published a blog post about this morning. So if you look up GLASSBRIDGE on the Google Cloud Threat Intelligence blog, you'll find a lot more detail, and there we have it broken down by company. So this graphic is directly from our blog. I'm not going to explain all of the relationships, but I just wanted to kind of show you how those firms are connected. So the firms are the blue boxes, and the red boxes are the newswire services that they either leverage or even directly own and operate. So although that there are 4 standalone firms, you see there's a bunch of connections. There's also behavioral similarities, and that's why we're tracking it together as one actor. So TTPs and narratives. All of the firms target audiences outside of the PRC, and I've prepared a quick alphabetical list of some of where their efforts are targeted. So we have Australia, Austria, Brazil, Czechia, Egypt, France, Germany, Hungary, Kenya, India, Indonesia, Japan, Luxembourg, Macau, Malaysia, New Zealand, Nigeria, Poland, Portugal, Qatar, Russia, Saudi Arabia, Singapore, South Korea, Spain, Switzerland, Taiwan, Thailand, Turkey, of course, the United States, Vietnam, and also overseas Chinese communities. So you see there's a lot of targeted places. All right, so diving in with some examples and more on TTPs. So the domains run by GLASSBRIDGE are designed to look like independent media outlets that publish news content on various topics. And the content on these domains include things like republishing PRC state media content, press releases, or content that has likely been commissioned by other clients. So you know those companies are all PR firms. They likely have multiple clients, so that's how we explain the likely origin of some of their content. So in this example, if you look at the red boxes of what I highlighted here, everything in the red box is actually a republish of a Global Times article, and Global Times is a Chinese state media outlet. And in this example, they're discussing, some really common PRC talking points like Beijing's territorial claims in the South China Sea, Taiwan, ASEAN, and we've also seen discussion of Falun Gong, Xinjiang, and the COVID-19 pandemic. In general, these sites are pretty low quality. A lot of their content is spammy and repetitive. So on top of the content that's aligned with the PRC government views, we have some filler articles on topics like the metaverse. So if you look at the example here, you see the bottom box, those are metaverse articles. There's another metaverse article that's in the right-hand box. And actually, if you look at this picture closely, maybe you recognize it from the example right before. So they're reusing these articles. Another indicator for quality, so this example, that's a domain that's purporting to be a Portuguese outlet, but actually they have content in both Portuguese and in English. And then one thing I especially liked about this example is if you look at the top, the media or news categories are pretty odd. So if you don't read Portuguese, there are categories like hotel check-in, phone games, and software development. So as far as I know, those aren't common news categories. So that kind of just shows you the quality and effort that goes into individual sites, which it's hard to keep up high quality if you're running over 100 of these domains. And then another thing that they do is publishing localized news content that they copy from legitimate local sources. So here we have two examples. The one on the left is a Brazilian example. They have a bunch of localized content, like stuff on soccer matches, on Brazilian vaccination policy and Brazilian agribusiness. And the example on the right, that's a site that's targeting Germany. And we have examples that are like local storm updates, a COVID update for the German state of Bavaria, and various other Germany-specific news. Another thing that we've seen with these domains is that they sometimes republish DragonBridge content, which is the threat actor that I was talking about in the beginning. So if you know much about DragonBridge, you know that one of their favorite topics is this exiled businessman Guo Wengui. And here you see a classic example of DragonBridge content on one of the domains run by GLASSBRIDGE. Another example of a DragonBridge narrative being published on GLASSBRIDGE domains is here on two separate domains, the exact same article with a completely fabricated claim about the then presidential candidate in Taiwan, Lai Ching-te. All right, so what does all of this mean for enforcement? So by using these private firms, the sponsors of information operations gain plausible deniability. So they can obscure their role in these campaigns. And in the case of GLASSBRIDGE, we cannot attribute who hired these services to create and publish the content. We do assess that they may be taking instructions from a shared customer who has outsourced the distribution of pro-PRC content via imitation news sites. And as for Google, we have removed over 1,000 domains from eligibility to appear in the Google News corpus and Discover. Google is committed to information transparency, and we will continue tracking GLASSBRIDGE and will continue blocking their inauthentic content on Google platforms. So here on this screenshot, you see a couple of examples from the Tag Bulletin, which is our quarterly publication where we share a little bit more about things we've been forced on, and there's regularly a bullet point about GLASSBRIDGE in there. All right, so what does this mean for I/O in general? So these inauthentic news sites operated by GLASSBRIDGE show how information actors have embraced methods beyond social media to spread their narratives. So we've actually seen this in a presentation earlier today about Russian actor Doppelganger. And it's also been published about from multiple players in the industry about Iranian domains. So both Russia and Iran are actually doing similar things with domains. And by posing as these independent local news outlets, I/O actors are able to tailor their content to specific regional audiences and present their narratives as seemingly legitimate news and editorial content. But in fact, the content has either been crafted or amplified by PR and newswire firms who either conceal their role or they actively misrepresent their content as allegedly local and independent news coverage. And the screenshot I have here is from a very recent DOJ affidavit supporting the seizure of doppelganger domains, so as a Russia example. All right, that's everything for me today. Thank you very much. And yeah, like I said, if you're curious about this, you want to see more details, do check out our blog post. Like I said, it went up this morning, so just in time for my talk. And there we have a lot more details. So thank you.